We, the jury, finds as follows as to count one, victim Charles Jones. The defendant is guilty of first-degree murder as charged. Did the state of Florida prove beyond a reasonable doubt the defendant was a member or an associate of a criminal gang during the commission of the offense? Yes. We, the jury, finds as follows as to count one, victim Charles Jones. The defendant is guilty of first-degree murder as charged. During the commission of the offense, did the defendant personally carry, display, use, threaten to use, or attempt to use a firearm? Yes. We, the jury, find as follows as to count one, victim Charles Jones. The defendant is guilty of first-degree murder as charged. During the commission of the offense, did the defendant personally carry, display, use, threaten to use, or attempt to use a firearm? Yes. Did the state prove beyond a reasonable doubt the defendant was a member or an associate of a criminal gang during the commission of the offense? Yes. We, the jury, finds as follows as to count one, victim Charles Jones. The defendant is guilty of first-degree murder as charged. If during the commission of the offense, the defendant personally carry, did the defendant personally carry, display, threaten to use, or attempt to use a firearm? Yes. Did the state prove beyond a reasonable doubt the defendant was a member or an associate of a criminal gang during the commission of the offense? Yes.
First-degree murder. Conspiracy to commit murder. Four men stood in a Tampa courtroom, and when the verdict came down on May 8, 2026, none of them had anywhere left to run. Isaiah Chance, 23. Sean Gathright, 20. Rashad Murphy, 32. Davion Murphy, 29. All guilty. All facing the rest of their lives inside a cage. But before you hear how they got there, before the evidence buried them, before an eyewitness made the whole room freeze, you need to understand one thing. This wasn't a crime of passion. This wasn't a fight that got out of hand. This was a planned, calculated, cold-blooded execution of a rapper named Julio Foolio. And the people who did it drove over 200 miles to make sure he never saw his 27th birthday. Subscribe to CrimeX right now. Because the moment the prosecutor laid out the conspiracy, the masks came off, and what happened inside that courtroom will make you question how far gang loyalty can twist a human being. Hit that subscribe button before I tell you who really pulled the trigger. Charles Jones, known to the world as Julio Foolio, was celebrating his 26th birthday on June 23, 2024. A hotel in Tampa. Friends around him. Music playing. The kind of night that should have ended with a hangover and a few blurry photos. Instead, it ended with 3 masked gunmen ambushing his SUV at 4:30 in the morning. Pistols. Assault rifles. Bullets tearing through metal and flesh. Foolio was hit multiple times, one round piercing his lung, his heart, his aorta. He bled out before paramedics could even get him to a hospital. 3 others were wounded. One of them, Xavier Edwards, collapsed in a parking lot begging, "Don't let me die." Now, here's what makes this different from every other drive-by you have ever heard about. The killers didn't stumble into this. They didn't just happen to be at that hotel. They came from Jacksonville, 230 miles south. They drove through the night because Foolio made the mistake of posting his birthday party locations online. And somewhere in a gang hideout, 4 men saw those posts and decided that a rival rapper's death would earn them stripes. Isaiah Chance acted as the scout. His cell phone pinged right outside the hotel hours before the shooting. Sean Gathright, just 20 years old, was one of the gunmen. Police later found a ballistic mask, a vest, ammunition, and a rifle with tape wrapped around the grip in his home. His DNA was all over it. Rashad and Davion Murphy, cousins, were the other 2 shooters. Davion had tattoos of dead rivals inked into his skin. He wore their names like trophies. And when the verdict was read, he sat there with no expression at all. But the state didn't just have guns and phones. They had something better. They had a witness. Someone inside that car the night Foolio was murdered walked into court, raised their right hand, and told the jury exactly what happened. Who gave the order? Who pulled the trigger first? Who ran when the police lights flashed? And just like that, the defense's entire story collapsed. Because the defense wanted you to believe this was a case of mistaken identity. That the real killers were still out there. That these 4 young men were just in the wrong place at the wrong time. The jury didn't buy it. Neither will you. This is CrimeX, and today we are breaking down the trial that sent 4 gang members to prison for life. Subscribe now, because the details of the testimony, the jailhouse calls, the moment Foolio's own mother stared down her son's killers, are coming up. And I promise you, by the time this video ends, you will never look at a hotel parking lot the same way again. Let me take you back to October 2025. That is when the first trial began. Not for the shooters, but for Alicia Andrews, Sean Gathright's 23-year-old girlfriend. She was the lookout, the one who booked the Airbnb where the killers planned the ambush, the one who tracked Foolio's location on social media and fed it back to the men in real time. She was found guilty of manslaughter, not murder, because she didn't pull a trigger. But the judge made one thing clear. She knew exactly what she was doing. And without her, that ambush never happens. By the time the four main defendants stood trial in early 2026, the state had built a case so airtight you could feel it in the courtroom. The lead prosecutor, a woman who had put away more gang members than she could count, looked at the jury and said something that stuck. The motivation here comes from a desire to rise up in the gang world. That's it. That's the whole story. No robbery. No self-defense. No heat-of-the-moment rage. Just four men who wanted to prove themselves by ending another man's life.
All right, Ms. Andrews, you're charged with 2 counts. One is first-degree murder, and the other is conspiracy to commit first-degree murder. Did you know that Charles Jones was going to die on June 23rd of 2024?
No, I did not.
Did you have any involvement in Charles Jones's murder?
No, I did not.
Did anyone tell you anything about a plot to kill Charles Jones when you went to Tampa?
No, they didn't.
The moment the surveillance footage played on that big screen, you could hear people gasp. The video came from the hotel parking lot. 3 figures in all black, moving fast, guns raised. You see Foolio's SUV pull in. You see the figures approach. Then muzzle flashes. 7, 8, 9 rounds in rapid succession. The SUV tries to reverse, but it's too late. The shooters keep firing even as the car rolls away. One of them, later identified as Sean Gathright, pauses to fire 2 more rounds into the back windshield. Just to be sure. The defense tried to fight back. They pointed at the 3rd teenager in the car that night, the one whose name was never released, and claimed he was the real shooter. They said Cordova? No, wait, wrong case. Let me correct that. That was from the Pamela Cabriol's script. For this Jones case, the defense argued that the state's witnesses were all criminals, all liars, all looking for reduced sentences. They brought up Isaiah Chance's age, only 23, and said he was just following orders. They said Rashad Murphy was a father, a family man, not a killer. Then the state called their secret weapon. A woman who had been inside the hotel that night. She was not a gang member. She was not a criminal. She was just a guest who happened to look out her window at 4:30 in the morning. She saw 3 figures running toward a car. She saw the guns. She saw their faces. And when she got on the stand, she pointed at Sean Gathright and said, "That one." He was the one in the middle. He was the one who didn't stop shooting. The courtroom went silent. Gathright's lawyer objected, tried to shake her testimony, asked how she could be sure in the dark. She looked right at him and said, because he took off his mask for a second, "I saw his face." And then she described the tattoo on his neck. The same tattoo police had photographed the night of his arrest. Subscribe to Crime X. You do not want to miss what the jury did next. The jury took 4 days. 4 days of sifting through cell phone data, surveillance footage, ballistics reports, and testimony from people who saw their friends gunned down in a hotel parking lot. 4 days of looking at the faces of Isaiah Chance, Sean Gathright, Rashad Murphy, and Davion Murphy. 4 days of asking themselves whether a gang rivalry was worth a mother's son, a sister's brother, a child's father. On May 8th, 2026, they walked back into that Tampa courtroom, and the energy shifted immediately. You could hear people holding their breath. The clerk stood up, unfolded a piece of paper, and began to read. Count 1, first-degree murder. Guilty. Count 2, conspiracy to commit murder. Guilty. She said it 4 times, once for each defendant, and each time the word guilty landed like a hammer. Isaiah Chance lowered his head. Sean Gathright stared straight ahead with the same hollow look he had worn the entire trial. Rashad Murphy closed his eyes. His cousin Davion did not move at all. Pamela's family? No, sorry. Let me be precise. Foolio's family. His mother was in the front row. She had sat through every day of testimony, every autopsy photo, every recording of her son's last moments. When the verdicts were read, she did not scream. She did not cry. She just put her hand over her mouth and nodded once. That was it. That was 3 years of waiting, finally over. But the trial was not finished. Because first-degree murder in Florida comes with two possible sentences: life in prison or death. The same jury that had just convicted them now had to decide whether these four men would ever see the outside of a cell again. Subscribe to Crime X right now, because what happened during the penalty phase will make your blood run cold. The prosecution brought back every piece of evidence, but this time they added something new: the impact on the people Foolio left behind. His mother testified about the phone calls that stopped coming. His sister talked about how she still buys him birthday cards every year and leaves them on an empty chair. His manager described the last conversation they had, just hours before the shooting, about a record deal that would have changed everything. Then the defense took their turn. They asked for mercy. Isaiah Chance's lawyer said he was a follower, not a leader, a young man who got caught up in something he could not control. Sean Gathright's mother broke down on the stand, begging the jury to spare her son, saying he was a good boy who made a terrible mistake. Rashad Murphy wrote a letter to the court, read aloud by his attorney, apologizing to Foolio's family even while maintaining his innocence. Davion Murphy said nothing. He sat at the defense table with his arms crossed and stared at the wall. Then the judge asked each defendant if they wanted to speak. 3 of them declined. But Sean Gathright stood up, turned to Foolio's family, and said 5 words. "I ain't kill nobody, though." That was it. No apology. No remorse. No acknowledgement of the bullets that came from his gun. Just 5 words that told everyone in that room exactly who he was. The judge, Daryl Sockley, had presided over dozens of murder trials. He had sent gang members, drug lords, and career criminals to prison for decades. But even he paused before he spoke. He looked at Sean Gathright, then at Isaiah Chance, then at the Murphy cousins. He said the words slowly, deliberately, so that every person in that courtroom could hear them clearly. "The things done to some of you as children should never have happened to anyone. But that does not excuse what you did to Charles Jones. You drove 230 miles to execute a man at a red light. You planned it. You celebrated it. And you have shown no remorse." Then he dropped the sentence. Life in prison for each of them. No parole eligibility for at least 25 years. For Sean Gathright, the young man who fired twice more just to be sure, the judge added an extra 10 years for the attempted murders of the other victims in that SUV. Isaiah Chance got the same. Rashad Murphy, the oldest at 32, received life plus 15. Davion Murphy, 29, life plus 15. The courtroom erupted again. Foolio's mother finally let go. She stood up, pointed at the 4 men, and said loud enough for the microphones to catch, "My son was a father. He was a son. He was a brother. And you took him because of a street name. I hope you rot." She walked out with her family. None of the defendants looked up. Subscribe to Crime X. If this story matters to you, if you believe that a mother's grief should never be turned into content without purpose, then hit that subscribe button right now. 1 click. That is all it takes to never miss another deep dive into the trials that changed lives forever. Here is what the news did not tell you. After the sentencing, the jailhouse phone calls were released. Sean Gathright called his girlfriend from his cell and laughed. He said, and I am quoting directly, "They ain't got nothing on me. I'll be out in 20. Those calls were played for the parole board. They will be used against him at every single hearing for the rest of his life. Isaiah Chance wrote letters to his family from his cell. In one of them, he said he regretted nothing because Foolio shouldn't have been dissing our dead homies. That is the mindset. That is the culture. A 23-year-old man sitting in a cage, still defending the murder of another human being over rap lyrics and neighborhood borders. Rashad Murphy, the one who wrote an apology letter to the court, was caught on a recorded prison visit telling his cousin, "I only wrote that for the judge. Don't believe that soft stuff." Davion Murphy has not spoken to any journalist, any podcaster, any family member about that night. He sits in his cell, does his time, and waits. For what, no one knows. But here is what matters. Leo, Pamela's son? No. Let me refocus. Foolio's son. He was 5 years old when his father was murdered. He is 7 now. He will never hear his father's voice again except on old recordings. He will never get a birthday card signed Dad. He will grow up knowing that 4 men traded his father's future for gang credibility. That is the part no verdict can fix. That is the part no sentence can heal. If you made it this far, you care about justice. You care about the victims. You care about the truth. So do me one favor. Subscribe to Crime X, smash that like button, and leave a comment below. Do you think life in prison is enough for these 4 men? Or should Florida have pursued the death penalty? I want to hear every single opinion. This is Crime X. We do not glorify killers. We tell their stories so the victims are never forgotten. Rest in peace, Charles Jones. Julio Foolio, gone at 26. And to the 4 men who took him, enjoy that cell. You earned it. I will see you in the next case.